This meeting is being recorded.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to, what day is it? October 31st edition of the Gateway API Sync. This is the last one before KubeCon Chicago. We moved it to Tuesday for so that we got in our EU-friendly time zone. Thank you all for coming. As usual, this meeting is governed under the Kubernetes Code of Conduct, boiling down to effectively be nice to one another, so please be nice to one another. Please use the raise hand feature in Zoom if you want to ask questions or interject, and that helps us to prioritize and keep everything flowing. We have an open agenda. There's not a ton. Oh, no, there's a lot more on it now. But you're still welcome to add things at the bottom. And if we can get to them today, we will try. And with that, I think we'll just get right into it since we do have a bigger agenda than I thought we had. And we'll get started with talking about the GA release. We have a tentative release schedule of Ingress to Gateway on October 24th. Actually, Rob, go ahead and do you want to jump in here real quick?
Yeah, sure. So high level, this is basically copied almost verbatim from what we said last week. So there's nothing really new other than that the dates we had tentatively planned for actually hit directly. Yep. So hurrah. So one thing, congrats to Lior. He's on this call. He really drove Ingress to Gateway through. Really, really great to see that. I think it's also the first time we've been on Hacker News in any kind of like meaningful thing, for whatever that's worth, but that was wild to see. So congrats again. Yeah, so Ingress to Gateway, big announcement. Thanks for getting everything together there. Gateway GA, that's planned for today within 2-3 hours. Who knows how long it will take, but we'll say within a couple hours. And then we have another blog post coming up that I think we've got a few different authors that have been collaborating on it. I've been out, so I haven't paid as much attention to where that is. I know everyone has content in there, but I'm guessing it could benefit from a round of review. I don't know if anyone else has a better update on that one, but those are the big things that we are looking to get out this week. And yeah, I think that's all.
Cool. So yep, those blog posts are either out in this case or just about to go out in the cases of these two. Yeah, this one, I think I pinged John about it because he started. I was to organize it, but he kind of started it. I think he just needs to add some of the suggestions and then a little bit more review, and we'll be good on the features one. We also technically have a blog post for Blixt, which is going out to kh.dev. I didn't list that one here, but I'll put it on here if anybody's interested. Okay. So yep, after this, Rob and I are kind of getting together, and you should start seeing the machinery of getting GA actually released moving. Lior, you had a question?
Yeah, just a quick one. I haven't had time to look at the blog posts PRs, but is any of the blog posts maybe has a small reference to Ingress to Gateway as well?
I don't.
They should, but I don't think they do. That would be a good backref. Yeah, we should do that.
The link to the Kubernetes website docs pull request that I'm working on does reference the Ingress to Gateway tool.
Awesome.
But
yeah,
we should also be in a blog post.
Yeah, agreed.
All right. Oh, something disappeared on me. Oh no, it's moved. All right. Next up, not sure how to pronounce that necessarily, but do you want to talk about is this person on here?
Sure, yeah, I'm here. Thank you. So I am Guy Catalato from Red Hat Quadrant. I'm not always able to join this call, so thanks again for opening up the EU-friendly time slot. So I would like to raise again this issue that was proposed a while ago for enhancing the HP root rule and HP root match with an additional name field. and particularly how this has been affecting us at Quadrant recently. I won't get to details of the issue itself because it's so well described there. It's been there for a while, but more recently, one different way that it affected us was at Quadrant was because with our policies that build on top of policy attachment, we want to make possible for users to specify in the policy references to sections of the target network resource, right? Specifically HP routes. So in a typical Quadrant policy, a user can declare that a given portion of the policy applies only for one or a set of HP routes. And by not having a direct way to refer to those HP route rules by name, the solution we found was importing the HP route match type and defining our own matches lists inside of our policies. So the users, they basically list again the same, they repeat the same HP route matches that they have in the HP route. And we use those to look up for the exact HP route rules where that particular part of the policy should apply, right? And we call those route selectors in Quadrant. I'm leaving some references there in my comment in the issue. After the validation rules based on common expression languages were introduced to the HP route, and I think that it was back on 08, right, if I'm not wrong, we started running into this issue of the estimate overall cost or complexity of those rules added up together at the level of our API is exceeding the threshold, right? And forcing us to set some hard constraints on the number of policy rules that one can declare inside of a Quadrant policy, right? And as an example of that, one of our policy types is the rate limit policy, where a user can declare different rate limits. And sometimes some of those rate limits apply to all the HP route rules in the target HP route. Some other times only to a subset of those, right? Because the overall cost adds up together from the estimate of each individual HP route match type that is declared in the policy. In total, that is forcing us to live with a quite limited number of rate limit rules in this case that one can declare inside of the policy. I'm leaving some examples there, and I think that this issue is worth checking out in general. I think it can be a nice addition for the API for all other obvious reasons. So this is just to point out that yet another way that has been affecting us, and this time it's because of the estimate cost of those validation rules. Yeah, Rob.
Yeah, this is really interesting. Thanks for sharing. It is good to see policy out in the wild and understand how it's used. This is, policy is one of those things where, unfortunately, until backend TLS policy launches, which will be momentarily, we don't have much internal idea or within the project itself idea of how it's actually working because it's implementation specific. So it's really good to get these stories and examples. The first thing I was going to say regarding the complexity, the cell complexity, that has bitten me in multiple times, and it seems like you did what I was going to suggest of just adding a limit to the number. Like it just falls apart if you don't have everything bounded above it, right? And it sounds like you found that and you added some kind of limit in the struct that contains this match. Was that your solution?
Yeah, correct. That's what we ended up doing, right? The problem with that is that that number, given the threshold, happens to be a very small number, right? Meaning that in one, the number of policy rules you can write in the policy ends up being, I think in our case, 14, no more than 14, where we do have use cases where users would declare like 50 policy rows.
Okay.
Right?
Okay,
Even
got
though only a small fraction of those would resort on the so-called root selectors, right? So it's only a matter of passing the validation of the API server. And
Yeah.
Yep.
Makes sense. The other question I'd have, anytime I see this policy attaching to a specific route rule, one of my questions is, well, I guess these are two questions, but one, had you considered using a custom filter, because you can use a route filter that points to an extension ref. We don't have good guidance today on when you would use policy versus when you would use a custom filter. So everyone's just kind of making their own decision. So I don't have a recommendation for why you would or wouldn't, but I'm curious what led to that decision
Right.
for you.
Yeah,
I
that's a
actually
fair
have
question.
a recommendation. I would recommend that if you
Sure.
can use a filter, you should use a filter rather than attaching policy, because you will sidestep a bunch of issues like this, where HTTP route, these are gateway API resources. We control them. It's not like a service where we don't control it. So I tend to, and this is a personal opinion that many people disagree with, but I tend to believe that if you're talking about something that is a part of a resource that we control, it probably makes more sense to put it in the resource that we control rather than trying to attach a policy to it.
Right. Thanks for sharing that. I should have given more context. I think, and then we've been following the whole filters versus policy debate, right?
Debacle.
And debacle, yeah. And I think we quadrant fall in a very special case there, where we are not gateway API implementations ourselves, right? So we do not have a gateway of our own. Rather, what we do is we extend existing gateway functionalities by defining our own custom policies, right? So with that in mind, supporting something based on filters becomes more of a challenging, right? Challenge, because we would have to define some kind of filter that would need to be acknowledged by the actual gateway implementation, right? So whoever delivers the gateway, we need to not to refuse that, right? Not to reject that. So that's why we went with the policy attachment approach.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's actually a very, very good use case. We should write that down somewhere. Whenever, really, we need an issue to we may already have an issue to describe when to use one or the other, but that's a very good use case for for using policy over filters. The other question that I have here, it may be tied very, very closely to your design here and your specific policy, but is there a reason that you need this to be able to target a specific route rule as opposed to just a route as a whole? Like, could your users, customers just split up their routes to have more than one route, for example?
Well, there are all sorts of different designs we could think of here, right? That one included and asking for users to split the routes into multiple resources. We thought about that, right? And we went with an approach where users could keep on using what they already had and just add the policy on top of that. But there are also other things that we could have used here for this particular use case of targeting only a subsection of a gateway API resource, such as, for example, instead of duplicating the HBroot matches, right, and to use that as lookup key for the actual HBroot rules, we could have just listed index numbers in the original list of HBrout rules, right? But we wanted something that would also improve the visibility of the end result afterwards, right? So we would like to be able to provide some quality status back to the user later and say, you know what, that rule that you have, so that one is protected with this rate limit definition that you requested, right? This other one, because you did not target that one, it's rate limit free, so there's no policy applied that. So it's also about the quality of the status we can report back to the user later.
Yeah,
I think
that
one
makes
of the
a lot of
challenges
sense.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges with the HTTP route is that given that it is possible to put multiple rules into a single route, people are going to do that. And I think it makes a lot of sense in many cases to offer the guidance that perhaps you should not lump things that need separate policies into the same route, but people are going to do it, and that's a thing we have to be prepared for too.
So, kind of going back over this, we call this implementable, but I don't think there is an actual GEP for this, right? It's got somehow marked that way. I think at the end of the day, you're saying that having unique named fields on route rules would basically solve your problem, right?
Yes, that's correct. I think that it will solve this one problem that's more recently affecting us, but I
Right.
also believe that overall that could be a good addition for the API for the other reasons already mentioned in that very same issue, which by the way was originally proposed by the Istio team.
Okay. Then I think that if you have the time, and obviously this would be kind of a post GA thing, like after KubeCon and stuff like that, but I think that the next best step here is to try to drive forward, build consensus, maybe check in with Songzu. I don't think I've heard from him in a while. And then the Istio people, Costin, said something here, and try to head in that direction and maybe get a first like GEP going, which includes some of your considerations. Because I don't think we had any actual GEP. I don't know how it got marked the way it did, but that seems fair. And we, up until this point, we haven't had anybody that's been able to kind of jump on this and move it forward. That's why it's kind of, you'll see updates on here where it's like, we want this, but somebody's got to jump on it. So if you do have the capacity to kind of jump on this and drive, please do. And then, obviously your use cases and stuff like that, include them and make your case. I think that's the next best step, is just to get started on that.
Yeah, I would say that I'm not 100% sure that I think this is inevitable, but we need to be very, very careful. That's what I would say. Like, policy is already complicated. Every new facet of policy we provide makes a complicated thing more complicated. And in this case, we're verging on the territory of providing too many ways to do the same thing. When there's already one way to do something, like to extend a route rule, for example, and we're adding a different way to extend a route rule, we need to have very clear guidance on when you would use one versus the other. And we're kind of lacking that right now. So I do think we should dig into this, explore that. A GEP is a good way to kind of write that out and understand it. But I would say that there are some very big questions we still need to answer here. And a GEP is a good way to answer those, but just it does not mean like 100% sure this will make it in. It's just something that we need to have more thorough discussion around.
All right. So for the moment, I'll thank you all for the immediate feedback, and I will not hold you any longer on the topic. I'll make sure to reach out to the Istio guys to see if they still have interest in that particular issue. And then we can maybe try to build that consensus that Shane mentioned before. And just one last example here, Rob. That definitely applies for the case of the HB route, but there is an analogous one for when we target a gateway, right? Where we do have, in the case of the listeners, the section name that we can rely on. So I think it's also a matter of consistency in the API.
Precedent.
So I'll try to build on top of that, right? On all the benefits of having the name there beyond this specific issue that we've been dealing with.
Yeah, no, I agree.
You.
I push back for context. I pushed back for quite a while on adding section name to target reference for policy, and eventually let it through. And so it's there, and now I get that is inconsistent here. So I get the problem that we're headed towards.
So you're saying you regret allowing that through? Is that what I'm hearing?
Not exactly, but I knew that it would lead to further, slippery slope.
Section name is a gateway drug.
That's it. We're banning you as moderator for puns like that.
All right. Thank you very much. We appreciate you jumping in
Thank you.
there. Let us know if you need any help, like kind of keep, getting people together and stuff like that. Obviously, like Rob said, there's no guarantee we go all the way to like, yeah, we're going to do this, but we really appreciate you helping to push it forward. And obviously, since you have a use case, that is a very good thing to do. So,
Sure thing. Thank you.
yep. I had a small update next. This is not a for sure thing, but we as in the maintainers have been considering reorganizing implementations.md according to conformance profiles. So obviously we're not going to do that right before KubeCon. We're just trying to give a heads up right now that we may consider putting like implementations that are reporting conformance as in like a different list from everyone else so that people can see the ones that are actually like conformant implementations, because that list is huge and it'll be easier to navigate. We're also looking at other display things that we want to do for conformance reports and are very open to suggestions on that end, because right now what we have is very basic with badges and stuff like that. And so this is also just kind of a heads up. We might start kind of prioritizing or differently listing implementations that are reporting conformance. We're not going to do that in any kind of hurry because we don't want that to be a surprise to anyone. And also a call out to everyone that if you have somebody who has, if you or somebody else has kind of like some interest in doing UI stuff and making the reports look prettier, we would really appreciate help with that, because so far what we have is basic. So any questions on that? Otherwise, that's it for that. That was just kind of like a, hey, we're talking about that.
I'd echo what Shane said about the entire docs site in general. If
Please.
anybody has, like, I am not a designer. I don't know. I don't think anyone who's worked on our docs is. And so anybody who wants to, spruce it up a little bit, very welcome and appreciated. That's all I'd say.
Yeah, if
and
you
the,
let me
the thing,
do it, it would look like a GeoCities site. So please come help
right,
us.
right. And
animated GIFs of hamsters. Sorry, go ahead, Rob.
And just, one other follow-up on what Shane was saying there. I think what we're really trying to encourage here is just reporting the conformance you have. Obviously, we want everyone to get to a state where they're fully conformant with everything, passing all the things. But even just understanding where the gaps are is better
Reports,
than, so just if you
reports
can
are
submit a
so
report.
important to us.
Yeah.
It's so helpful to the project.
Yeah. Cool. I think that leads right into mine, which is just KubeCon. It's coming up awfully soon, next week. We mentioned at the last meeting that we're going to have office hours. We've decided to do them just kind of on the tail end of lunch. So Tuesday to Thursday, every day between 2 and 3 p.m. The location may vary depending on what's available. Just follow up in Slack if you have any questions, but we'll try and post information as soon as we have it. But yeah, we'll see you Tuesday to Thursday. Well, whatever time you can make it, hopefully at least one of those. It could just be a casual conversation, but if you have actual, enhancements, discussions, whatever you want to have, that's a great opportunity to chat, brainstorm, whatever. And we'll try and take some notes. If we have any, meaningful discussions, we'll try and take some notes in this doc here. And kind of, I guess, I think we mentioned in Slack, but kind of by definition, because KubeCon is next week, there won't be one of these meetings next week.
Yeah, it is canceled. Cool. No hands up, so we'll move on. Danyan, adding Gateway API to the K8's website docs.
Yeah, there's just an announcement that we have this PR out there, and it is now at the point where it got tagged as needs tech review. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom, Shane, I believe that is the wording that Tim Bannister used. Yeah, right there, ready for tech review. So, Rob, I'm not sure what that means. Does that mean that it's Gateway API maintainers that need to review this, or do you have any context there?
Yeah, it's there in Kubernetes upstream. There's basically docs review and tech review. And tech review is basically anybody. I think they recognize anybody who has a role in SIG Network. I don't really know. I've been able to do tech review before. I think anybody who's, working on the project in any regular capacity would be helpful here. But I'll definitely add this to my list of things to review. I know Shane could as well. So yeah, thank you. I mean, I haven't said this, or maybe I said this last time, but thank you so much. I'm beyond excited to actually have docs representation on Kubernetes IO as well. This has been long overdue. So thank you for picking this up and running with it.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, happy to help. And for others, just some additional context is, the document is, essentially kind of a boiled down version or a summary of kind of the main points of the Gateway API docs website. We want to keep it simple, focus on the GA resources, and then build the documentation out from there. And how we go about kind of building the documentation out from there is something we discussed during last week's call that we need to probably think about a little bit more after KubeCon.
Looks good so far.
Cool. Thanks, Glenn. That's all I got. Just wanted to give everyone a heads up and ask for tech review on this.
Yeah, thank you. And I will check that out shortly, personally, but you'll probably get some other people now that you shared it on here. So cool.
I looked over it and am looking at the Netlify thing, but I'll add a +1 to it. I think it looks good.
I'll try to take a look too. Thanks for getting this up.
Oh, you bet.
Any other hands up? We kind of already talked about this one, but just to, I guess, to reiterate, Lior, do you want to say anything specific about this release?
Yeah, just a quick note. The release is out, and if any implementation needs help implementing the interface, so I'm here, also available on Slack. And just to mention that Mattia has done really good and still doing really good work for Kong implementation, which is highly appreciated. And I anticipate more people will want more implementations to onboard. That's all.
Yeah, I think that little detail is a key one, that ingress to gateway, despite the name, actually supports more than just the ingress as an input. It's basically supporting the generation of APIs that existed around ingress and translating them to gateway API. So I think Mattia recently added support for Kong's TCP ingress. Was that it? I'm not sure exactly what.
TCP ingress. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, there he is.
Oh, cool.
I forgot it's the EU time zone. Mattia's here. Wonderful.
Yeah, that's awesome. But yeah, thanks so much for adding that. And I think we all would love to see some more implementations come on board. And Lior and Kobe and others have done great work just to make the code structured in such a way that it is fairly straightforward to add additional implementations and API mappings. So
yes, please. Double extra on that. If you have an implementation that has ingress support and you have custom stuff that can convert to gateway, please do go see the work that's already been done, the path that's already been kind of walked, and add support for yours in there. It'll be very helpful to users.
To be honest, even if you don't support ingress, so the implementation
something
still
else,
works.
Yeah.
So,
if you support other things.
Yeah.
And they can convert to gateway. Cool. And then you want to talk about, I don't see any hands. You want to talk about supported features in gateway class, which you and I have talked about at some length before.
Yeah, I mean, the gap is already there. And while I was out, Rob helped with pushing my PR. So I think it should be for V1 unless plan has changed. But I just had an idea about how we will produce some conformance for it. Just wanted to bring it up to see what are the ideas. So basically, I thought about at the end of each conformance test to basically go to the gateway, like if it's successful, go to the gateway class and check whether it's reported as published, like whether the specific feature is published. And basically, I think it's covers this conformance for this gap, basically.
Yeah, I think
Yeah, it seems straightforward.
honestly, at some point, I think we want to get to a point where we move away from supported features being able to be specified as, CLI arguments or something like, and you just
Yeah.
give us a gateway class and we read the features that it claims to support from that directly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what we talked about at some length in there. That was
Right.
one of the main reasons I think we wanted to do this, was just so that we could just say read from there rather than anything you'd have to do in the test suite.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. This is a bit superior, but then like if we go this direction, so the conformance, like the way I suggested is not going to be viable, right? But then we need to think about how, for example, now I have no visibility to what implementation already implemented this gap and what implementation didn't. And the only visibility we could have is using conformance tests, but I have no good idea how to basically test it if we go the direction of like reading from there, because we go to the chicken and the egg problem.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I think it's fine if that is the only test coverage of it, because it's kind of, yeah, like you say, chicken and egg, but I think that's a pretty solid way to test it anyway.
Yeah.
I
don't see any, I can't think of any problem with that. Like, okay, you reported what you enabled, and now we'll just go make sure that you actually put that in your status. Seems very straightforward.
No, but like if we're going to the direction of like we're reading from the status and like the features, and on that features we basically run conformance tests, then there's no point checking again after the conformance test is finished.
Well,
maybe
I think that you could, in theory, produce something in the status, but then the report would not necessarily have it. It really depends on how people implement that. But if you implement it the way we expect you to implement it, you're right. We expect you to just run the test based on what's in your status. Yeah, you're right. That
Yeah,
could just be kind of like, what's the point?
This is going to be a little too meta, a little too, I don't know, but what you could, let's say that we have a supported feature to say that you support supported features. So a supported features. Then the only way you could
Rob.
But the only way you could possibly claim that support would be by going through like gateway class status supported features as the input. Like we wouldn't accept that claim any other way. And that could theoretically be the way you test it, as funny as that sounds. But yeah.
Yeah, that's one idea. But actually, now that I'm thinking about it, like if we do the change to read from gateway class the supported features, and based on that, run the conformance and generate the report, it means that whatever implementations wouldn't conform for it, so the reports wouldn't include the features, and they wouldn't run conformance. So maybe it will be strong enough to start with this change. I mean, of course, after V1 is like kind of stable, and then see whether we are in need for the supported features.
Yeah.
But we just need to be like in consensus that we are all feel good to change that from CLI arguments to read from gateway class. And we probably need like,
yeah, I mean, I think that's the path we need to go on, but
Yeah.
we can't make that the only path until this graduates to standard channel. But
Yeah, so we just need to get that, I guess, conformance innate. What we need then to get to where we're saying we want to go, because I agree, I think that's where we should head, where it's like you don't give us a list, you just give it, we just check your status and then run the tests. Is the next step is to have in the conformance profiles enabled test suite an option for that for now, so that people can start following that path and reporting based on that, as kind of a way to exercise conformance tests for it and start seeing graduating it from there.
Yeah. Gotcha.
So yeah, so it seems like we need to add the experimental field and then enable it in the the experimental test suite. And that's kind of like the next iteration to get toward further along in the experimental phase.
Yeah.
Yep. Cool. Anything else to say on that one? I don't see any raised hands. there will probably be a lot more conformance profiles, conformance report stuff that'll just start flying in the months following KubeCon. All right, we got 2 items for triage. I don't know who put them here, probably Rob. And one of them
Yeah.
is, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I put the first one. I don't know who put the second one. This one just came through the inbox, and because it talks about policy attachment in particular, I thought it would be good to discuss, because policy attachment is always a interesting area that can benefit from discussion. In this case, this is another ambiguous part of our spec right now for policy attachment. I had kind of imagined that your most effective way to do this kind of overrides and defaults would be to just take the top level keys, and if a top level key like external auth in this case is specified at a more specific level, you take everything under external auth and override it. But what is happening here, and it's a very reasonable interpretation, is they're actually doing a merge within that key. It actually may be the more reasonable interpretation of the spec today. And so that has unexpected consequences if you have external auth, HTTP, and gRPC, and one specifies HTTP and the other specifies gRPC, and you end up with a merge that has both. That gets particularly confusing. I have my own thoughts on how you could potentially avoid this, but I just wanted to open this up to others, because I know I'm not the only person who's been thinking about policy, who may have implemented policy. Yeah, interested in other opinions here.
I had always thought of this in much the same way you started off with, Rob, that if you're going to override something, you override it and you don't merge it. For exactly the reason being shown here, where the alternative is that everybody who's going to talk about an attached policy somehow convinces everybody on the planet to honor their specific rules for how to merge the policies, because these are very, we cannot come up with a single rule that will work for everybody unless it's that, oh yeah, if it's more specific, you override that entire top level key. I guess we could come up with a way of specifying here is the point of override, or this thing can be merged, but see previous comments about the complexity already present in policy attachment and the desire to perhaps not make it a Turing machine,
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's good to hear.
What Fern said makes sense to me. It's like,
Yeah.
kind of
I would actually go
walking another tightrope here.
Yeah, I would go even possibly a little bit further than this. I would probably wrap that into including the overrides section as well.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, it is actually really, really difficult for me to come up with a use case for the overrides section. But if we support it, then I would say that overrides everything that you list in there. And I think that we should start by just trying to define how these should play and then going from there. Sorry, did that make sense? That wasn't a very grammatical English sentence.
Would you mind, and sorry to ask, but would you mind, since you seem
You're
to have
not sorry to ask, Shane. Just
a little bit, a little bit. I'm like, well, I mean, it's like I don't want to like make work for you and stuff, but
yeah, you
since
do.
you have
Just
a good opinion, since you have a strong opinion on this, would you
Yeah.
mind popping it in there so that we can keep that, we can
I can do
have
that.
that for, I appreciate that. And then we can continue this conversation probably post KubeCon. But I will jump in there too, probably, but you articulated a lot of my feelings on the subject pretty well. With that said, unless anybody else has anything to add, maybe it would be best to, now that for anybody who wasn't aware of this and is doing policy and stuff like that, if you would want to join the conversation here, we would appreciate that, but maybe we can do the rest of this asynchronously and follow up on it in the coming weeks. If nobody else has any other pressing comments to add in the call here. Going once, going twice. Sold. Thank you, Flynn. All right, and then I don't know who added it, but somebody wanted to make sure, it might be Candace added it. Somebody wanted to make
Yep.
sure that we took a look at this. Candace, go ahead.
I just wanted to see if we wanted to get this in for GA. I just finished it yesterday. It's something that I was trying to get in for the gateway. For backend TLS policy.
Yeah, this is awesome. Thank you. I saw this come in and I am excited to actually have these docs already ready. I need to review it myself. It may miss the 1.0 release since that's a couple hours or less away, but
So
it
is
should,
there
I think it, go ahead.
is there a way that any of us can help so that it does not miss the 1.0 deadline? Because I would
Yeah.
also really like to see this in there.
I could just YOLO merge it right now.
Yeah, and the one thing, and maybe it is just already fine. The one thing I would say is it's a rather arbitrary thing. Like 1.0 can release, and this docs can merge like an hour later. It doesn't really.
Yeah.
It's not. It's basically just you're
Yeah.
trying to get this merged before a lot of people are looking at our documentation. Is the key thing. And
It not being actually in the branch when we release does not mean people will not see it when they say at KubeCon, oh, it's GA, go to the site. They'll see it as long as it made it into
That is
main.
also fine with me, for the record.
Yep, that's fine with me too.
So I'll make an attempt to get this reviewed quickly. But yeah, we will be going into, I've set aside the next few hours with Rob here. We're going to get into the release kind of right after this meeting. So we'll see what lines up, but it doesn't need to land right in the branch before the tag to be visible for GA. Thank you for adding it. Thank you for bringing it up. We'll get to reviewing it.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think this one in particular, I think will be really great to have in place before the experimental features blog post, which is targeted for, I think, Thursday of this week. I mean, hopefully it'll merge in today, but it hopefully very soon.
Yeah, we'll get on it. Okay, cool. So yeah, there doesn't seem to be anything else on the agenda. Raise your hand if you have any last minute things. Otherwise, like we said, we're going to start the gears going, putting gas in the tank for getting the actual release done today. Checking out any last minute triage things, that kind of stuff. And you should start seeing the tag roll eventually throughout the day unless there's any issues. What were you saying, Flynn?
Candace mentioned Gateway API pull 1967 in chat. I don't know what's up with that one, other than it's a pull request that's being merged. But
watch it be a Rickroll. Okay, no. All right.
I already looked at it. So, but yeah, Candace, what was the question about that?
Oh, that was in reference to the current conversation in chat. Is there a GitHub issue for tracking brainstorming on what people want to see on the conformance profiles display? Doesn't this have something to do with that?
This is related. I think where we ended up with, and I think I thought I wrote this in the chat, but it's like I think what we ended up with was we don't really know what like we don't have the requirements for the display. We just kind of alternatives considered. No, that's not it. We just kind of mentioned a couple of times we'd love for somebody to come up with those requirements. Like what should it actually look like? We have a badge right now and that's functional-ish. And you can click on it and get some YAML, and that's interesting for some people. So like it's not in great shape. We don't really have like requirements of exactly how we want it to look. We don't know what we want. That is we want somebody who has like kind of a creative mindset about this and does UI work to come in and kind of come up with that. That would be very helpful so that we have like, we want people to take pride in, like, we want the conformance reports. They make a huge difference for us. And will over time be very important for us to be able to kind of like see what people are actually doing in a way that we were never able to really do with Ingress. So if somebody is capable of coming along and providing the best quality kind of badge, like that implementations are extra proud to like link to or add in their thing, that would be great. the badge is sufficient for the moment, but I think what we want eventually is to have something that's kind of flashy and nice and maybe interactive that people can like go look at something. And we also want people who are users to go into the implementations page and kind of at a glance understand like what conformance reporting actually means. So yeah, sorry, I think I've said too much about it, but the point is we're looking for somebody creative to come in and figure those requirements out and then help implement an actual better display.
I think this really just means we need somebody to create an issue, because apparently we don't have one right now. I was looking around a little bit while we were talking to, and I can't find a great one. So if anybody wants to volunteer, even just to create the issue, not even so we have an overall one for conformance profiles, but like,
yeah, I was just going to make sure it's not in there, like as one of the.
Yeah, Christine has volunteered. Thank you, Christine.
Great.
I just wanted to know whether this had anything to do with what the conversation was. And let me understand this correctly. You got in a gap that wasn't fully specified? Ha ha ha.
Yeah. I mean, we got to this point right here where the specification was a badge. So we got to the point of experimental with a badge. I didn't realize there was a catch-22 there or something, but like the whole point was we were like, we don't know how far that needs to go. And we made kind of the intentional decision that with this GEP, we could potentially go all the way to implemented with this GEP with the badge. Like that was something we decided was sufficient to do this. It could be a separate GEP potentially if it needed to be, to do like some crazy display layer. I don't think it needs to be, but it's because it's sufficient that we were able to move forward with this one. We'd like something more. All we have is this though, 2286, which was the initial display, which is what we have today, which is, you know, it lets you see at least people who are like Gateway API savvy look at that and kind of know what's going on. So
yeah, I was being facetious. I saw at least one person smile when I said that.
Okay, gotcha. Sorry, I missed the cue there. But so if you do add an issue, we'll probably add it as, I guess, a subtask here. So please do just PM me after. I'll see it when you add that. We'll add it as one of the subtasks. Thank you to whoever is going to go create that.
I think Shane was trying to say that he fully specified the need for a badge without fully specifying what the badge looked like.
The badge just looks like a what is it called? You're messing with me again. Never mind. But what is it called? I forget the name of it. The badge thing that we use.
I don't remember.
It's like a site that does badges. Anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So thanks for bringing that up. And yes, somebody please create that issue and track that, and we'll continue the call out for better UI stuff. And again, to reiterate what Rob kind of added on top of that, we could always use a lot of help making the docs look better, the site look better, all these sort of things. So if this is your passion to like, you know, make things look good and do good user experience, we need people like that. We don't have a lot of people that work on like user experience stuff for our forward-facing pages. All right. Unless anybody has anything else, I think we're ending a little early. I'll give you 5 minutes back to get ready for your next meeting, get some coffee. Cheers.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Cheers.
Thank you.